Donald Trump is a very dumb man. He has the vocabulary of a second grader. No offense to the second graders out there. He had someone take his SATs for him. He doesn't understand how our government works, how tariffs work, how really anything works. And so it's no surprise that such a stupid person would want to attack the Department of Education, which is what Donald Trump now seems to have his sights completely set on. An illegal action to unilaterally get rid of the agency, based on the authority of the president, who doesn't have that authority. But thank God Democrats are stepping up. And it's not just Democrats in Congress, Democrats across the country. And one of our favorites? An educator himself, Tim Walz, who dropped the hammer on this plan from Donald Trump in both a legal and public way, that we are going to check out. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. And before, of course, we can get into Tim Walz, we have to hear, unfortunately, from Donald Trump.
Our Department of Education's, maybe more so than any other place, has a lot of people that can be cut. They're, number one, not showing up to work. Number two, they're not doing a good job. And if you take a look at our education process, and if you look at the charts, because they have numerous charts where they do the top 40, we're at number 37, 38, 39, and 40.
And what responsibility do you feel to the civil servants who have now lost their jobs? Many of them worked at the Department of Education during your first term.
Sure, I do. I feel very badly, and but many of them don't work at all. Many of them never showed up to work. Many of them never showed up to work, Kelly, and unfortunately, and that's not good. And when we cut, you know, we go, and that's what I had a number of meetings with a lot of people over the last couple of months.
There are a few reasons Donald Trump wants to attack the Department of Education. The first, of course, being, like we said at the top, he's a dumb guy. The second, and probably the most important, is because Donald Trump knows that the federal government has so much control in the way that it allocates its budget to different state education systems that this idea that Donald Trump puts forth, that states or cities or localities should be in charge of their education, is not actually what he wants. This has been the push from Republicans. Tell states to handle their own issues. And then, when they don't do what you want, withhold funding. This is what Donald Trump said he would do to any school that requires vaccination, or any school that includes DEI in their curriculum, or anything like that. That's what this is all about. It is about control through the power of the purse, which Donald Trump does not hold.
To being there for our children and to also understanding the science of learning, being able to have the background necessary to deliver in a way that gets to all students. And our core mission, as we talk about in schools, is to make sure that every child gets the opportunity to learn. It's in our Constitution in Minnesota. It actually goes back to the founding of this country. One of the great achievements we've had is public schools and the ability to recognize not one size fits all for students, and to differentiate on their education makes a huge difference. And that is done in partnership. It is done in partnership with parents. It's done in partnership with local districts. It's done in partnership with the state, and it's done in partnership with our federal partners. But what we're seeing right now is that there's not a desire at the federal level to adhere to both those values and the commitment to getting it done. A budget, as I've always said, is a fiscal document, but is a moral document. And to be able to deliver on these services, the Department of Education is filled with experts who have the ability to be able to target what we need to do and what we've learned over the years to deliver higher quality education. And I'm just going to say, and for the educators in this room, I think they can really feel this. I think for parents, as we see this, the care that goes into us, the differentiated care, if our children have IEPs and how they're delivered and that care that goes into it. The Secretary of Education, Secretary McMahon, was asked yesterday about these cuts and the impact it would have on IDEA and the impact of students. And she replied she didn't know what that was. And if you hear jaws dropping across this for educators, this is the most basic principle of equity and delivering for students in the Individuals with Disability and Education Act. It's been around for 35 years. For those of us in educators, it's the air that we breathe. It goes on and piggybacks to the American with Disabilities Act, but more importantly than that, It allows our children to be the best they can possibly be. It allows the resources and the targeted resources to be in schools. And the Secretary went on to say that they have let go 1,300 of those professionals, people who have spent their lives doing this. We understand this administration does not care about immunologists, does not care about science, does not care about facts, but they're showing this, as she said, she fired the worst and kept the best. And she also then went on to say she's been on the job a week. She's either the most efficient person that has ever lived on this planet, or she's not telling you the truth of what they did. They randomly cut experts that are impacting our students and will have a negative impact. So we're here today to make sure that we're lifting up the work that our schools do, the work that they do in partnership with parents, the impact that the move that's being made will have, the detrimental impact on children, individual children that it will have, but it will undermine our ability both from innovation in this country to economics by undermining the very principle that set America apart from the rest of the world, the idea of an equal education and a quality education for all children. So absolutely unnecessary, again, just like the chaos caused by the tariffs. I guarantee you there weren't a lot of parents that went into the voting booth and voted to have their schools undermined, to have the $1.4 billion be at risk, the nearly 860,000 students in Minnesota that are impacted by this, 2,500 schools, and that was not thought out, the chaos that will go through this. But then I heard, and I know we'll hear them push back, well, we're going to do competitive grants. Who's going to administer those? You fired everybody. We're just going to hand them out? We know they're going to do competitive grants. It'll be a litmus test. If you agree with them, they'll give you the money. And we've seen how this works with states. Ruby Bridges wouldn't have needed a police escort to go to school if we would have had the federal government and the Civil Rights Unit at the Department of Education in place. That's one of the reasons we have it, so that that doesn't happen, that every child has access. So here in Minnesota, we will defend every child. We will defend our schools. We will continue to make this the best state for children to grow up in. And we will push back where we can in courts with the attorney generals and with our friends where they violate federal law. And we will continue to do what we can to make sure schools in that classroom right in there, you saw bright, eager faces having the resources to be able to do what these educators do best, give every child an opportunity.
I am so very glad we have a fighter like Tim Walz on our side right now, a governor showing other Democrats at the state level how to lead and just doing it so unapologetically. And he's not just focused on Donald Trump. He knows that this is the plague of the rest of the administration. He is calling out all of MAGA, but very specifically Linda McMahon, the Secretary of Education, who, for some reason, or I guess because she's a student to Donald Trump, wants to get rid of her own department by the orders of the president. And Governor Walz very specifically called her out for the reason that we keep repeating on this show. MAGA is so bad at their job. But take a look at what he had to say right here.
I think just level set this for everyone out there listening or reading the stories, and for the folks in the room, for the folks running our cameras, for the folks, the journalists that are here, for the folks that do this. The person in charge and who came out and said this in Secretary McMahon, this is the simplest of tasks for your job. You would not have these jobs if you could not replace the batteries on your cameras. Or if you're a mechanic, we're talking about not replacing an engine, putting air in the tire. She did not know the very basics of her job. And the irony of this, of criticizing our schools, where she has never spent a minute in there or in public schools, is simply an outrage. We saw it last week when the Secretary of Agriculture told us to raise chickens in our backyard. And yesterday, I sat with this state's leading veterans advocates who now no longer can talk to the director of the Minneapolis VA, an absolute hero who all of us have known for decades, delivering the highest quality of care. We have to request DC to have a meeting with them now and can take up to 6 weeks to talk to that. You tell me how that improves veterans care. You tell me how that brings down the price of eggs, and you tell me what they're doing yesterday and today improves one student's education or saves one damn penny, because what they're trying to do is cut the money to give tax cuts. It's time for us to speak truth to it. These folks don't want to be involved in politics. They want to teach kids. They chose this profession because it's what they love. And now they've been thrown into the middle of this absolutely ridiculous fight. And it will go just as well as the tariffs have gone, just as well as the stock market's going, just as well as egg prices have gone. But this time it's our kids. and it's their livelihoods. So we're here to say in Minnesota, enough is enough. We will do everything we can to push back, and I'm grateful I just got off the phone to the Attorney General doing the work that they can do over there.
Tim Walz is right. But fundamentally, these people do not know how to do their jobs, which is largely the point. For the two reasons we always bring up. If they fail to do so, we're going to see not just firings, but likely resignations from career government officials who make sure those agencies run properly. It will just be such a toxic and poorly run environment that they'll feel no other choice but to leave and probably go make money in the private sector. But it's also because when they fail to accomplish their job, when they cede all their power to Donald Trump, like Linda McMahon clearly wants to, it strengthens his role as the unitary executive, the dictator on day one that he wanted to be. Breaking the law in doing so, of course. But that's what they want to accomplish, and it's scary. Especially scary because Linda McMahon's ideas, on her own, aside from Donald Trump, aren't that great. As we heard when Chris Murphy grilled her in her Senate hearing,
you're saying that it's a possibility that if a school has a club for Vietnamese American students or black students where they meet after school, that they could be potentially in jeopardy of receiving federal funding?
Again, I would like to fully understand what that order is and what those clubs are doing.
That's pretty chilling. I think schools all around the country are going to hear that. What about educational programming centered around specific ethnic and racial experiences? My son is in a public school. He takes a class called African American History. If you're running an African American history class, could you perhaps be in violation of this court order, of this executive order?
I'm not quite certain, and I'd like to look into it further and get back to you on that.
So there's a possibility, you're saying, that public schools that run African American history classes, right? This is a class that has been taught in public schools for decades, could lose federal funding if they continue to teach African American history.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I would like to take a look at these programs and fully understand the breadth of the executive order and get back to you on that.
I think you're going to have a lot of educators and a lot of principals and administrators scrambling right now.
fun fact, by the way, I don't know if you knew this, it was either the first election, I think it was the first election, that Chris Murphy won to the Senate in Connecticut. He actually ran against Linda McMahon. It's a little bit of a, I don't call it chemistry, but maybe some mixed feelings there. Chris Murphy, once again in that engagement, coming out on top. These people should not be in charge of anything. That doesn't mean that she should have her department shut down. It means that she shouldn't be running it. And it is our job to call this out, much like Tim Walz. It's always good to look up to Tim Walz. And if you want to support our mission of calling them out, on this show, every single day, as always, you can hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you.